Oh, thank Arbiter. They finally cleaned all that stuff up. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we have finally a nice, clean, snow-free Bastion again. Glory days, I didn't have to clean it up, which was the important part about all that. So we have the new Alice in Wonderland event. Alice's Adventures, I believe, is what they are calling this. This is bringing us a fusion. This is bringing us a new free login champ. This is bringing us a couple of other things and to bring us an event dungeon. So I wanted a chance to go over the free champion. I wanted a chance to go over the fusion champions. So this is a hybrid fragment fusion. So we have the Mad Hatter here, and you need to fill four of the Dawncaller Sabitha. So we'll take a look at Sabitha. We'll take a look at Mad Hatter. We'll take a look at Alice's kits. We will not buy this pack. And we'll have some fun figuring out whether or not these are worth doing, and then we'll go over the schedule to make a plan for how to best do this fusion if you're doing it. So first of all, we're going to deal with Alice the Wanderer. She is the 7-day login champion. She is a nuker. She is Sacred Order. She is magic because that's what we get. We get magic attack champions in Raid. And she is awesome. I love you got the hair on the back here. I love the sword. I love the aesthetics overall. She fits like she could possibly end up in Knights Rev rather than Sacred Order, but you know, Raid's a dark game, so it makes some sense too. But overall, they kind of nailed the aesthetics here. I think it's an overall very cool look. Let's take a look at her kit. Now, as I mentioned, she is an attack-based champion. She's a nuker. She's got a decent starting attack. Speed's a little low. Stats are not the greatest stats in the world, but she's not bad. She does have some accuracy to start with, which is better than nothing. She has an A1, attacks 2 times, places an extra hit if the active target has any skills on cooldown. So this is a 2, possibly a 3 hitter, and anything that has the conditional hits tends to do more damage. This can basically do an additional 50% more damage with skills that are on cooldown, which is actually something that she can do in her kit, so that's kind of cool. Each hit has an 80% chance, buildable to 100, of decreasing the duration of a random buff on the target by 1 turn. Now, one of the things that Raid actually mentioned about her, which is important, is she is a sheep-proof champion. So all of her abilities, they do need accuracy, none of them will be sheep procking. So the extra hit, definitely not sheep procking. Decreasing duration of a buff is not a sheep procking thing. It's stripping that is a sheep procking thing. So this could be a decent hitter. It's not, I've seen some of the damage testing on this. It's not bad. It is, it's not going to be end game nuker level of damage, but for an early game account, she's going to be worth building as your arena nuker for quite a while to come, and she can certainly do a lot of things like campaign farming and other stuff like that. She's got the AoE on the A2 here, 75% chance, bookable to 100, of increasing the cooldowns of all enemy skills by 2 turns. This effectively provides a 1-turn lockout, because when somebody's skill is on a 1-turn cooldown, the next time they take a turn, all their cooldowns reduce. So you need to go to a 2-turn cooldown minimum to actually lock somebody out. Now, there are champions that will add 1-turn cooldown to some skills. What you're hoping there is to land at a skill that's already in cooldown, but not far enough in cooldown to push it back 1 additional turn. That's kind of what those skills are for. She also has a 75% chance, bookable 100, for decreasing the turn meter by 15%. If at least one of the target skills has cooldown increased to max, then it decreases it by 30% instead. So she pushes back turn meter, she locks out skills, and if she locks somebody out all the way, she pushes it back even further. Very good ability overall. I will say that the turn meter is something that she could get sheeped with, I believe. So there's that, she's not 100% sheep proof, I guess, but or maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about turn meter affecting sheep, but I could have swore the turn meter actually could affect sheep. Maybe I'm wrong. The Queenslayer attacks one enemy, will ignore 20% of the target's defense. If the initial target is killed, it will attack the enemy with the lowest HP, will ignore 20% of the target defense. So it's a one-hitter that if it kills somebody, attacks somebody else again, and ignoring 20% of target's defense is huge for doing damage. And again, this is where we talk about her being a possible campaign farmer. This ability can kill 2 enemies in a single hit if she's built well enough. There's an AoE, and then her passive, which is even better, Passive gives her additional damage for each target that has remaining skills on cooldown. Basically, that's 3% per turn of cooldown on the champion that she hits. So this can get maybe to a 12% damage bonus, maybe a 15%, depending on how big the cooldowns are. More than likely, you're only going to get 3 to 6% out of this most of the time. But it does affect with her A2. She can definitely get those skills on cooldown a bit, which can help the damage a little bit. This is mostly just to make her a little easier to build because you are going to have to put accuracy in her to do these abilities. It's not the greatest compensation, but it's not too bad. And since she is going to be somewhat stat hungry, especially if you're actually going to try to build her for a lot of this control, then this kind of skill is definitely appreciated. And if you're not going to build her for that kind of control, this is just free damage afterwards on a nuker. Active effect, though, 3-turn cooldown is resets the cooldown of one of this champion's skills each time they kill an enemy, occurs once per skill. Basically, once every 3 turns, she can kill somebody and get a skill reset. Now, if she does her AoE here, she kills one person minimum, she resets this AoE, so the next turn she can go again with the AoE. So again, Campaign Farmer can kill 2 people, or kill everybody, kill 2 people with this skill, and then you've only got 2 people left on the final round. You either may end up A1ing somebody, or you might get back around to this for some other reason, and they're dead. Nice and easy. So I think she is going to be a viable campaign farmer for early to mid-game accounts, an improvement over Kale, for example, or any of the starter champions, because that will allow you to take those starter champions into other content where they might be a little bit better suited, particularly if you're going to go with Kale, for example, because Kale is very good in Clan Boss, brings a lot of poisons, can be helpful in a couple other content as well, but he needs a slightly different build than the campaign farmer dedicated build sometimes for those to maximize it. So I think overall having Alice early will be great. Mid-game accounts, lockout champions are great for arena. Damage dealers are always helpful. I don't know if she's going to be a mainstay Hydra damage dealer, but you know what? When you're starting Hydra and you're just moving into normal or even hard, any damage dealer is better than none. So that's pretty good. She's not exactly the squishiest champion around. I mean, it's 16k HP and 10k defense or 1k defense. Not great numbers, but not horrible numbers. I've seen attack nukers with much, much lower numbers. So overall, I like her kit. She also has an aura here. So she's got attack ally in battles by 30%. So very good overall, especially if you're going to, again, this is 30% extra damage in campaign for her. So again, campaign farmer, very good. And it seems like I'm focusing on that, but a lot of that's because I will be doing the free-to-play challenge soon, and I think with the free-to-play challenge, Alice is probably my target for my campaign farmer fairly early because I think I can build her for that and other content at the same time and will be very valuable, and then I can focus my Kale somewhere else and the other champions I have in other places as well. So overall, good free champion, very good for early game, useful in mid game, useful in late game, probably not an end game champion overall. End game teams are probably going to want her just for the lockout, maybe if they don't have a lockout champion. Probably not for the damage, but she's got an interesting kit that's usable enough by enough players. I think it's a great free login champion, and I think for the most part, no one's going to complain about getting her. So moving on to the Fusion Epic, we have Sabitha here, and she is certainly nice looking. Not quite as fancy as some of the legendaries, but she's an Epic, so that makes some sense. Still a nice looking champion. I like the aesthetics overall. It is very nice revy, and I kind of like the little hat here. And it kind of fits the theme with the Mad Hatter stuff just a little bit with some of the faces here and the color scheme, I think. So I think it will work well with the Alice adventures as well. And she has an actually pretty amazing kit. If you are a new player and cannot do this fusion or just don't want to do this fusion, definitely pick up at least one of these epics because they are absolutely amazing. So she's got an A1 here, attacks one enemy, heals the ally with the lowest HP by 10% of this champion's max HP. Now they're a support champion with a lot of HP for an epic, so 10% heal on an A1 to the lowest champion. Very good skill overall. There's no one going to complain about this. Very useful. It's certainly not going to make or break a champion, but it is a nice ability to have. A2 here places increased defense and increased accuracy buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Now you've got a Mithrala that does this in addition to an attack with Hex. Obviously she's not going to be a Mithrala, but you've got maybe 1 or 2 other champions that bring increased defense and increased attack on the same skill. And the fact that she's got it on a 3-turn cooldown, pretty impressive. This is going to be useful again for early game where you have trouble to get that increased attack or that increased defense. So she'll be helpful in Clan Boss for increasing your damage while also increasing your defense. She'll be useful in Arena for people that are early that have defense-based nukers as opposed to the attack-based nukers. You can go either way with her, which is very nice. Overall, very, very solid ability. But what we've got here is a wonderful, wonderful revive. Revives an ally with 25% HP, 100% turn meter, and block damage for 2 turns. Now, this is one of the best revives that I have seen in the game in a long time. There are certainly revives you could argue are a little bit better, ones that give a little more HP. There are a couple of them that put max turn meter as opposed to 100% turn meter. I think Raglan's is the only one that does 100%. And then you've got Cardinal, who does a max turn meter, which means they're guaranteed to go. This is not guaranteed that she's going to go, because 110 turn meter doesn't mean that she's the next in line, because some people could have more than 100%. I know it sounds weird, but that's how raid works. But block damage for 2 turns means unless you have somebody that can ignore block damage or can strip it on the other team, that champion is going to get that turn and possibly get their next turn, which is amazing. So from a revive perspective, you're still a little squishy, but of course she does have a heal on the A1. But this should get somebody going. And it's on a 4-turn cooldown, which is still a very good revive. There are plenty of revives that are not this good on 4-turn cooldowns on legendary champions. So she is going to be an amazing reviver for early game accounts and mid game accounts. I think she's actually going to be really good for Centranos, where it is really easy to have your person that got revived immediately get nuked down again. So that block damage is going to be super helpful. Finally, we have whenever this champion revives an ally, decreases the cooldown of one of this champion's skills by 1 turn. So remember when I was talking about this being a 4-turn cooldown? It could end up being a 3-turn cooldown instead, because she does a revive, puts this on cooldown, and then her passive procs, and suddenly it's less. Otherwise, she gets back around to this increased defense, increased attack ability, 1 turn sooner, also very good. That is just a really, really cool skill. Now, it's certainly not as cool as, say, just simply having this on a 3-turn cooldown, but it's nice to have the option. It's nice to have a champion that can cycle around to their skills when their skills are very helpful. And increased attack and increased defense help the person who just revived survive longer and do more damage or do other stuff as well. So overall, very good epic. I have actually not looked at the Fusion calendar yet. I've got that ready to go, so I will take a look at that and we'll make a plan for you guys shortly. If there's a chance to get an extra one of them, I might actually do every part of the Fusion and get this extra champion to make sure that not only am I going to have this champion, but I'll also get the Fusion champion. I'm not going to give up the Fusion for this champion, but I think they're good enough that if I can get both, I think that would be awesome. And finally, we have the Fusion champion here. We have the Mad Hatter. Now, wow, they have really kind of knocked this out of the park here. He's got a bit of this clown Joker aesthetic to him, which is fine. It actually matches the card playing things very well. I love the face. It definitely has like a Batman Joker-esque vibe to it, but it's also got, again, the clown vibe overall. And I think some of that is just because that the Joker is a traditional clown-based buffoon. There is a level of that that's going to show up in this design anyway. But honestly, it's a very original design. I like it overall. Again, there's a lot of faces on a lot of these champions that are in this Ellis. They've got the playing cards as well. I got the little tea kettle here. Overall, I really, really like the aesthetic on this champion. Very nice. Ooh, green eyes too. So what does he do? Well, I think he's pretty cool. He's got an increased accuracy in all battles aura, which, plays anywhere. Very nice. 60 is good. There are better, there are worse, but very good overall. There's a lot of champions that are at 50. There's a couple of champions that are at 80, but, for a affinity legendary fusion, 60 is good. This is a very helpful skill, will help a lot of players early on in progression, can help in Hydra, can help on Doom Tower, can help with a lot of the higher end content immediately where you're struggling to get the accuracy with the other stats that you need. Got an A1 here, attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 25%, bookable to 50, of stealing 1 random buff. Each hit also has a 75, bookable to 100% chance of debuff spread effect, taking 1 random debuff the target and placing it on all enemies under a hex spell. Now, this being a 100% is nice on a 2-turn. Basically, he will spread 2 debuffs, assuming there are Hex other people out there. He does actually have Hex in his kit, which is nice. He reminds me a little bit of a Thylesia, who is also in this faction, has a very similar ability on her A1. It's only a 50% chance on her A1. She doesn't get Hex out as reliably either. So, assuming he gets Hex out more reliably, he'll be very useful in any content where you're going to be using Hex, and that debuff spread is actually going to be very valuable. Particularly in places like Hydra, debuff spread allows you to spread underneath the poison cloud, for example, because you're placing these debuffs. So he can actually put burns on heads that have poison cloud on them, for example, if they've also got Hex on them already. So I think that's a very good skill, will be very useful for a lot of people in Hydra. And for an A1, it's nice. You get him some ally attackers. You can have all kinds of extra fun stuff with that as well. The stealing a random buff is kind of nice too. And it's a 2-hitter, so he's got a 50% chance on 2 different hits. Basically a 75% chance to steal at least one. Overall, pretty good. A2 is attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance, bookable to 100, of placing a Hex debuff and a Weaken debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. The ally with the highest crit damage will team up and join this attack. The ally joining the attack will use their default skill, will increase their damage by 10% for each debuff on the target. So he'll put those 2 debuffs up there, and the person attacking should get at least a 20% boost in damage. He'll have put Hex up everywhere, so the Hex is going to do additional damage to everybody with that ally attack. It is, I've seen several people talk about this as a very Tiosk X. He's also damage based on HP. That's actually kind of important. He's got a chunk of HP. You don't need to build him for any attack if you want to put some damage on him. And since you're going to want him tanky anyway as a bit more of a support champion, you get extra damage out of making him tanky with HP. So that's actually kind of nice. Is this a HP? This is HP as well. That's awesome. So very good ability. I like the fact that he will actually pair very well with an Ugo who does the decreased defense and block buffs. So Weaken, Hex, decreased defense, and block buffs on 2 champions combined. Very nice. It means you don't have to take your Lydia with you in some cases. It means if you don't have a all-in-one placer other than Lydia, you don't have to use them. Very, very good for some progression. Will be very good for additional teams because you only get 1 Lydia. And a lot of people don't have a lot of extra decreased defense and Weaken champions. So the fact that he can do Weaken and Hex on 1 skill and somebody else can do decreased defense opens up a lot of team compositions for you. So I think this is actually a very good skill. I don't know how much damage this is going to do, so I'm going to guess he's probably not a major damage dealer. But again, if it's HP-based damage, you're getting more HP out of making him tanky, which is always a good thing in a support. Finally is A3 here, Whiff of Madness, increases the duration of all buffs on all allies by 1 turn, and decreases the duration of all debuffs on all allies by 1 turn, and then fills their turn meter by 20%. This is not the greatest skill in the world, but the turn meter is appreciated. The increased duration on buffs is very powerful, and where that plays, it plays very well. The decreased duration of all debuffs is very nice, particularly because decreasing the duration of most crowd control debuffs will reduce them from 1 turn to 0 and knock them off. So very, very good. It means you don't have to bring a cleanser necessarily on team because he's got effectively a partial cleanse. So for example, in Hydra again, if you're getting hit by poisons, and that can actually be a big damaging effect for your champions, he can decrease the duration of all of those poisons by 1 turn, effectively cutting the poison damage in half. That's all good. Turn meter fill is always appreciated. There's no content where turn meter fill is not appreciated. So yeah, is it the most amazing ability? No, but I think it's a very good ability. It's going to help a lot of early game players. It's going to be very useful in the mid game and even on end game teams. I think that he will be helpful on the lower end teams to allow you to run different champions on your higher teams. So if he's in your normal team on Hydra when you're doing Brutal, or if he's in your hard team when you're doing Nightmare, that's great because the fact that he can fill some of these extra roles, it means you have more flexibility in your champions and in your team building, which means you might be able to take a champion you kind of had to take out of this for hard and put them in your Brutal or your Nightmare team. So I think he's going to be a very good fusion for a lot of people. He is definitely going to be very useful early. I think he's going to be very good mid-game. I don't know how great he's going to play in Arena. He does have the turn meter fill, and then the increase of buffs and the decreased duration of buffs can be helpful in Arena. but it's probably not the best thing in Arena. He's got a lot of debuffs, which is not great, although that ally attack can be very nice in Arena because basically you can use that to get an extra attack out of your nuker. And then debuff spread, yeah, it's got some use in Arena. There used to be some bomb teams that focused on that as well. So maybe it's not too bad, but they do need Hex for this debuff spread to work, which I think is going to be problematic. Finally, every 10 turns taken by allies heals all allies by 20% of their max HP. Every 6 turns taken by enemies places a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. Now, this is 10 team turns by your allies, but on a 5-person team, that's basically after everybody's second turn, he does this massive heal. And 20% of their max HP is a chunky heal. It's a pretty good heal. It's not going to be the best heal in the game, but it's nice extra healing, and especially in something like Hydra, where you could use all the healing you can get, that's going to be very helpful. Even a Chimera team, extra healing that you're just going to get every so many turns, nice. Passive healing helps a ton because it means you can focus on other abilities more. And then the True Fear, not bad. Not going to play well versus a lot of bosses. Could be okay in Arena. Could be good for wave clearing. And in fact, honestly, on the wave clearing front, I think the wave clear could be good. If there's specific enemies that require fear, that's not necessarily too bad. I will say that because it's every 6 turns, it is going to place when the ram takes their first turn. So there's a chance that he places True Fear on the ram in its first form. And then actually, yeah, it actually lines up particularly well to hit the ram the second time on his first turn as well. So because it's every 6 turns on the enemies, the Mad Hatter is actually one of the few ways where you can place True Fear on the ram before he takes his first turn. So you might have a chance of not die on the first attack, because that first attack often kills somebody, especially depending on if you're running the super high level teams, or if you're not running like a Krisk who can defend himself a little easier or something like that. So yeah, that could actually be very interesting. Now, it's still True Fear is going to be a 50-50 shot, but it's a chance. You know, RNG, the name of the game here. So overall, I like his kit. I'm not sure if he's going to be an endgame Arena champion. I'm not sure if he's going to be an endgame Hydra champion, but I can see that he will fit into teams and help people. And I can see some of the places where he will. And overall, I think he's going to be good for a lot of accounts. So I would actually recommend going for him. He's not a must go for. He's not like an S tier must get. I'd probably put him in the low A tier maybe as a really good. He's not niche. He's not only occasionally you're going to use him. He's good. He brings a lot of utility. And because he brings a lot of utility, he will play well in places, but he's also not top tier in any one location either. So I think he's kind of a bottom A tier level champion. It's one that I think I'd highly recommend going for. If you can't get him and you just want to skip, you're not necessarily missing out on a blockbuster champion here either. So don't feel too bad if you can't make it, or if you just decide I am done with fusions for a little while and need to take a break. I totally get it. So let's go take a look at the schedule and see how we can get him and make a plan for how we're going to attack this fusion. All right, so I'm going to hide myself just a little bit here so you can see that we have 250 fragments totally available. So what do we have here? Well, we've got a couple things. First of all, we have the Champion Chase tournament right here. We, of course, have the Summon Rush right here. And then, of course, we have an additional Summon Rush right here. This is worth noting. This is where the extra 50 are. So I'm not a huge fan of this because it means you have to basically go through all of the rest of this fusion to figure out whether or not you're going to do this Summon Rush or not. But, you know, they've been doing the Summon Rushes here on Tuesdays. I believe this is not going to be during a CVC either, because CVC is going to be next week. So that's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday over here. So this is going to be a 2X. I believe this is going to be 2X Ancients. It could be 2X Sacreds. I'm hoping it's not, but I believe this is going to be a 2X Ancients. I don't think we've had 2X Ancients around for a while. Assuming this is 2X Ancients, this should hopefully be fairly easy for most people to get. Ancients are one of the easier ways to get the Champion Chase points. It's usually about 2,500 points, maybe 3,000 points. There are a couple of things you could do to make this easier. This is going to be a Void Epic. That's going to be 300 points. So you could get enough fragments to be able to fuse one of these Dawncallers during this champion chase to get yourself an additional 300 points. You obviously will have any other fusion champions you had previously. If you have any remnant summons, you can certainly summon those. Those are going to be worth at least 2,500 points, possibly up to 1,000 if you get a mythical. Good luck with that. It's kind of hard. And you do have the prism shards that we have right now, which will overlap into that Friday. So you won't be able to buy any more prism shards, but any prism shards you pull that weekend should give you 250 points each, assuming that that event's actually lasts. In fact, let me go check. Okay, yes, indeed, we do have just over 3.5 days left on the ability to pull prism shards, 2.5 days left for deals, so you won't be able to buy any more if you decide to buy any more. But if you're going to run the tournament for the Sand Devil, you've got at least one possibly epic in the bag, maybe a legendary. You've obviously got the remnant shards, as I mentioned before, if you're able to finish Centranos or do anything in Centranos and get some of those. Those can be helpful. You can use previous fusions. So there's plenty of ways to work on the champ chase outside of pulling your ancients. But on top of that fact, it is going to be a 2x ancients. If it happens to be a 2x sacreds, I would certainly do everything I can to not pull a lot of sacreds. You are going to want probably 6 sacreds over here. That's a good guesstimate for how many you're going to need for the summon rush. It could be 7. There's a small chance it could even be 8, but I'm expecting it to be 6 or 7. Just that generally feels about right with the summon rush. There is no extra here. So unlike normally where I would tell you to save for 10 more sacreds here, you don't, 10 or more sacreds here if you can, if you want to get the extra fragments here, because they're going to be in this event here, you're probably going to want an extra 6 sacreds down here. That is an S. So keep that in mind. If you're going to go for this extra summon rush, you're going to want to have a total of 12 sacreds. Now, we just had Doom Tower reset reasonably-ish. I don't think we're going to have another... Actually, we might have another Doom Tower reset before this next event. So we may actually have enough time, probably not, to get another sacred. You can obviously get sacreds from the 3v3 shop if you're high enough in 3v3. You get your monthly one at some point in time. Hopefully you're doing Clan Boss well. And if not, just plan on only doing one of these and not doing the other one and making sure you hit everything else. Now, I can tell you that if you only have 6 sacreds and you're worried about skipping one of these events, you could certainly argue that you could skip this summon rush and just do this one, because at very least, hopefully the 6th one that gets you one set of fragments here gets you one set of fragments here, and this is not too bad to get the second one, because usually it is going to be 10 to get both of them. So that would probably be what I would aim for, is if you're going to skip an event, you can skip this summon rush as well, and then you do this summon rush instead, but make sure you have 10 sacreds before you even skip this rush. In fact, don't plan on getting additional sacreds between here and here, because you're talking about the end of day Sunday before the beginning of day Tuesday. That's not a lot of time to get 2 more sacreds, or 1 more sacred, or however many sacreds you're going to get. So that does give you some backup in case you miss one of these events or 2 of these events. As far as what events you want to deal with right now, easy ones that we usually have, you've got the classic arena right here. Let's get a different color. That's fine. Classic arena over here. So there's 2 classic arenas. Those are traditionally very, very easy. You do have the artifact enhancement events. So it looks like we're going to have 3 artifact enhancement events. So you are going to need about 60 million silver, but you're going to need 60 million silver over the course of 2 weeks. And you'll have a chance to farm Fire Knight and Spider before you get to even the second one, let alone the third one. So hopefully you should be able to farm some additional silver here. We have, that is very unfortunate. We do have 3 Dungeon Divers events. So that is going to always be a bit of an energy sink. The good news is this Dungeon Divers event is over a champion training event and Fire Knight tournament and Spider tournament. You get some overlap with all 3 of those. So do not go hard in Fire Knight right now. work on, run Fire Knight with whatever extra energy you have, but don't put additional energy in towards your Fire Knight initially. Wait for Dungeon Divers to trigger tomorrow, and then you work on Fire Knight hard. You can certainly work on the champion training event too during campaign if you want to during the Dungeon Divers event. That's very helpful. Meanwhile, do what you can for the champion training event in the tavern right now, so you're not blowing a bunch of your energy that you might do for the Fire Knight here on the Dungeon Divers. And meanwhile, hopefully you can do the Artifact Enhancement event, or most of the Artifact Enhancement event, either with what silver you have now, or the silver you're going to earn in this Fire Knight and maybe Champion Training event. We've got the Spider event here next. That is not going to overlap with CVC. Very annoying. In fact, this Dungeon Diver here, I'm going to put an extra X by this here. This is a dangerous one. Look at this one here and notice that it only overlaps with a little bit of Spider. It does, however, overlap with CVC. So if you're going to run a bunch of Spider for CVC, which is not bad for getting some additional silver anyway, then this Dungeon Divers probably won't be a problem. But you do have to make sure that you run events that are going to get you Dungeon Divers points during this CVC, because this Spider tournament alone is probably not going to be enough to just get this Spider Dungeon event done. Finally, we do have the Ice Golem and the Dragon Tournament that overlap this Dungeon Divers. So you could certainly wait a day or two for the Ice Golem Tournament. The dangerous part about that is if you're not going to start diving into it deeply until Friday, then that's the last day for the Ice Golem Tournament and the first day for the Dungeon Divers. So that can be a bit of a problem. I would probably just not spend extra energy on this. Just do what minimal energy you can. And one of the other things to keep in mind for all this, which may be where this Dungeon Divers event comes in play, is we have the event dungeon that's just been unlocked as well. I have actually not had a chance to take a look at it yet, but the event dungeon is something you could certainly run to get additional Dungeon Divers points as well. So that may be even a better option for you than anything else, is finish the Fire Knight tournament, finish your Spider tournament, whatever you can, and then move into the new event dungeon when you're not doing something else. That'll get you additional silver because you'll have the extra gear you can possibly sell. And then that'll get you some extra pinpoint gear. Pinpoint gear is amazing. Definitely do the event dungeon. It's worth farming pretty much whatever level you can farm at it. So Ice Golem Dragon Tournament will fall under this Dungeon Divers. And then we've got the Champion Training Tournament right here. So this is the one that you can use things like books for. This is the one where you can use Ascensions for. So this Champion Training Tournament is a good tournament to start training up all your Dawncallers, I think, because you do need to ascend them as well. And if you're not going to ascend them during this Champion Training, then you ascend them during this Champion Training, because it's at least free points at that point in time. So I don't think this one looks like it's too difficult, other than the fact that you have 3 Dungeon Divers and one of them has no real events that overlap it particularly well. I mean, you have a little bit of Spider here and a little bit of Ice Golem, but there's this basically 2.5 day gap here for stuff under Dungeon Divers, which is very unfortunate. But because you have the event dungeon, I think that that's actually going to be easier than we might think to get that Dungeon Divers. So hopefully making a plan will help you get this fusion. I think he's worth going for. To be fair, I think I can find use for a lot of champions in this game, but I think especially early to mid-game accounts are going to really like what he brings to the table. And I think for end-game accounts, it's nice to have a champion that is this flexible and usable somewhere else. Plus, the Weaken and the Hex will help you add damage on Centrano's floors where you can only use force supports, for example. So I think he will be very useful and very helpful on a couple of Centrano's floors. And overall, I think he's going to be a fun champion. So let me know, are you going to be going for this fusion? What do you think of the calendar? What do you think of these new champions? I'm certainly excited to dive into this Alice event. And until the next video, I appreciate you guys hanging out here. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm Bront CatHerder.